Thanks for being with us here on Morning Live. Now, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo says it is unacceptable that witnesses who have given or are still about to give evidence to the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture are targeted and attempts are made on their lives. Now, referring to the alleged attempt on the life of a person known as Witness 1 this past weekend, Zondo asked the country's law enforcement agencies to assist the Commission by dealing with these threats speedily. Witness 1 has reportedly survived a hail of bullets while going to work over the weekend. And joining us now is Tshepiso Mohlala, who is the son of Mbombela Municipality Speaker Jimmy Mohlala, who was murdered in 2009. Tshepiso, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tshepiso, if we could just start by perhaps reminding those who may not know or those who have perhaps forgotten about who your father was, Jimmy Mohlala, and what actually led to his murder.
Right. My father was, of course, a member of the ANC, and he was a prolific speaker. And not only that, he was also known as a whistleblower, which is what led to his assassination. And, of course, there was a lot of money involved in corruption. And on the 4th of January 2009, then they came in guns blazing at my house. That's when he got killed and I got shot as well in the crossfire.
So if we just go back to that day, as you say, unfortunately, your father lost his life during that attack. You were injured. Did you know prior to that point anything about the uncovering of the corruption that your father was busy with?
Well, he did give me some hints, but he never really gave me the details as to who may or may not be involved in the corruption. But he did give me the inclination that he is seemingly under attack, because there was a time when he got a car accident, and when that happened, he told me that there are people who are after him. They want to take his life, but he never really gave me the details as to why they are looking to take his life.
So we know that death threats and whistleblowing have become synonymous, very uneasy bedfellows, but especially in Mpumalanga, that at the time had been known as the Wild West. Do you know anything more about people your father may have confided in with regard to the corruption that he was uncovering, and also whether there was ever a threat assessment done with regard to his safety?
Well, to be honest with you, I feel like my dad was surrounded by nothing but a brood of vipers, because everyone around him just simply disappeared after his death. So we don't really know much as to the people who were close to him, the people who supported him, who stood by his side. And even in relation to the death threats, we are just left in the dark, because when the police came to investigate, instead they chose to accuse us of murdering him, instead of trying to find the real perpetrators of the ones, of course, the people who committed the crime.
So just talk to us a little bit about that. When you say the police accused you, you mean yourself and other members of your family, and what exactly did they say?
It was me, my cousin, and my mother. So they wanted us to confess, to make a confession that we don't have a confession to, you know. So they basically said to us that we need to point to somebody that we think may have done it. So they started giving us names, and when they gave us names, we were supposed to agree to these names, and they took us to a moment of torture. They gave us, I remember it was a very excruciating time, because they had this electric belt that they would put around your waist, and they would tell you not to scream. And as they were questioning you, they would, of course, shock you. And, of course, initially you just find yourself screaming, because there's no ways when the electricity begins to run through your body that you would just keep quiet.
And how long did this continue for, Tshepiso? And at what point did they change tact and start, widening that net to actually find the perpetrators?
The interrogation with us, it was done for approximately, I think, a few hours or so, because we were taken to just some shady place where we were really not aware where we were as ourselves, and because we thought we were being taken to the police station for questioning, but that's not where they took us to. And in terms of the widening of the net, in relation to the investigation, we haven't really received much. I think the only people that I feel like have really tried to reach out and investigate are the journalists, but the police themselves seemingly haven't done anything. There's no feedback, no progress, none whatsoever.
So I find it curious when you said earlier that the police came up with names and they wanted you to basically corroborate what they were putting on the table, if I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
Are you able to share those names with us? And have you subsequently been able to establish why and where that came from?
So the one name that they shared was basically a name of a next door neighbor. I don't know the other names that they shared with my mother and my cousin, but the names that they shared were basically, for me personally, they just gave me the next door neighbor and they said, this must be the guy. And of course, at that moment, I just agreed because that's the name that they gave me. But initially, I had told them vehemently so that no, this is not the guy. He could not have done that. But they kept on pressing me to say I should agree to that. And, well, as for other names, no, but the only thing that I do know is that there are some names that have come out, in terms of, journalistic research, that people have been throwing out a few names, and those are the only names that I know. But the police on that day never gave me any names.
So, as things stand right now, it's almost 12 years since your father was assassinated. Has there been any prosecution, any movement with regard to bringing finality to his assassination?
To be honest, no. I'm very despondent towards the justice system. I have no faith in it, none whatsoever, especially with the way that it has handled my father's case. And I'm sure it's not the only one. Looking at all the other cases, and it seems like instead of this corruption being, curtailed or, cut by the knees, instead it's increasing. It's actually growing instead of being stopped. And like you said, Mpumalanga is like the wild, wild west. And it doesn't matter what we do, Mandy Wiener has written a book, but we even wonder how far will that book go? Will it create a ripple effect to a point where the government and the justice system actually begins to do something about it? We really don't know. But like you said, it's been 12 years, and all I've been doing is praying that the Lord may vindicate my father, and actually the perpetrators may be brought to justice.
And I'm about to speak to Mandy Wiener, Tshepiso, but in conclusion with you, we watching the State Capture Commission right now, and the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has applauded those who literally are risking their lives and the lives of their loved ones to assist the Commission and the country. And you may have seen over the weekend reports of someone known as Witness 1, who also survived an assassination attempt. Now, after your father was gunned down by these anonymous people for uncovering alleged corruption and intending to report it, how does this shape your views about whistleblowing? Would you personally do it?
Personally, yes, I would, because my father stood for something. He stood for what he believes in, and I think it's exactly what we need. If that could be an inspiration for people to actually stand up and say, I'm going to stand for the truth, I would say that I would do it, and I would encourage others to do it as well, because we can have all the potatoes rotten in the government. And it's one of those things where now we know and we see and we realize that it can actually bring change. If we've got people who are willing to stand for the truth and what they believe in, then that can make a difference. Then eventually, somehow, I think it will come to a point in time where those who need to be brought to book will be brought to book. But if we all are silent and nothing is being said, nothing is being done, then we are just flowing with the river of corruption. And we are saying kudos to everyone who is, exercising self-aggrandizement, soliciting funds, or doing whatever they are doing to better their own lives to a point of taking other people's lives. So I would say that I look at my father, and for me, he is truly nothing but a hero. I am in awe of him, and I honor him for what he has done, and I would do it as well, because I stand for what he believed in. He stood for the truth. He stood for transparency, and that's what I stand for as well.
Tshepiso Mohlala, thanks so much. Son of slain Mbombela Municipality Speaker Jimmy Mohlala, sharing his family story and views on whistleblowing in South Africa. Well, this is, of course, a very important story. And we obviously heard the story of Jimmy Mohlala's son, Tshepiso. You think of a more contemporary case, that of Thabiso Zulu in the Sindiso Makatla case, who still hasn't been afforded security, who's survived a hit on his life, and all of this because of being a whistleblower. But we're going to take a quick break. On the other side of that, we'll be in conversation with Mandy Wiener, who, as Tshepiso Mohlala says, has written a book about some of this.